stages of change was part of the PPP. I don't think I need to remind you on what caused the split and the consequences of the split thereafter. But thereafter, we had 28 years of continuous undemocratic rule. And undemocratic rule is far different from democratic rule. Undemocratic rule itself presents many difficulties and challenges that negate growth and the development and social advancement of societies, communities, and countries. So after the 28th years of dictatorship, democracy was returned in 1992. Subsequently, we had various stages of pre-electoral, electoral, and post-electoral challenges, all of which led to different manifestations. Successive PPP government sought to develop an agenda that embraced all the people of our country. After all, the party I represent and the party I came from is a party that has been built on a national pillar. It's a national party and is reflective of Guyana as a whole. Notwithstanding that, however, as I said, pre- and post-electoral difficulties and challenges were there.
Yes.
And after the last elections, well, before the last elections, you're aware that a no confidence motion was passed. And after that motion was successfully passed, 3 months after we were supposed to have elections, we had to go through the courts, and we waited almost 1.5 years or more to have those elections. When those elections were concluded, what we saw was a deliberate attempt to steal the will of the people, to undermine democracy, to derail our democratic gains. And after that elections, it took us 5 months to have the democratically elected government installed.
But Mr. President, that's precisely what I'm saying, because I'm saying those who would sabotage, those who would undermine.
I'm coming to that now.
Yes.
I'm coming to the premise of your question.
Yes.
But we needed to set the foundation.
Yes.
Now, one will say, how do you deal with persons who deliberately sought to undermine democracy? How do you deal with persons who sought to thwart the will of the people? My answer is very simple. We have to take out individuals from the collective good. I know thousands of supporters from the then government who disagreed, many of whom went public on their disagreement with what was taking place. So, in addressing this issue, we have to ensure that the government delivers to every segment of the Guyanese population at every level.
Yes.
And allow those supporters, even of the opposition now, to feel a part of and inclusive of the development framework, inclusive of a better standard of living, better quality of life, better services. So we cannot look at the creators of the conflict.
Yes.
We have to look at the Guyanese population. And that is why I said in subsequent interviews, I want to break down the bureaucratic barriers and work directly with the people of this country.
But let me ask you this, Mr. President. Let me ask you this, Mr. President.
That in my presidency,
yes,
I will be going into communities directly.
Yes.
Listening to ideas, sharing ideas.
Here's one idea.
Development framework.
Here's one idea that has come forward so far, though, Mr. President. Usually, where election subterfuge is concerned, people usually say, well, it's a failure of systems. In Guyana, the systems were weak, and we're going to come to that. But you also correctly say that there were individuals who were intent on manipulating those systems. I say that to ask, the changes that are necessary to reform, as one example, how your electoral commission is set up. That's a change I'm suggesting to you, Mr. President, that is impatient of attention. That is something you will have to change to prevent the brinkmanship that helped to cause the 5-month protracted uncertainty that was in train between the holding of the election and you being sworn in as president. You would agree, I'm sure.
Of course, and that is why we said of great importance is the electoral reform and constitutional reform. But before we get to that reform, there are many questions that has to be answered. That is why I said also that we must have an international COI into what took place during those elections and after those elections. Because I believe too that people has to be held accountable. You have to be held accountable for your actions. And your actions cause tremendous harm to the people of Guyana and to our country.
Mr. President.
So that is one aspect, holding people accountable. And secondly, I agree with you that we have to look at electoral reforms and constitutional reform. But in looking at electoral and constitutional reform, it has to be driven through a method of consultation. You won't see a president who would say that this is what we're going to do. Of course, I have my ideas on what should be done.
Yes.
But the final product has to come through a consultative mechanism and machinery
I hear you on that.
Involves the citizens of the country.
Yeah, I hear you on that. But let me suggest this one to you. And I hear you on the Commission of Inquiry, which outsiders are keen to see Guyana hold to have some serious questions from that mess answered. But let me ask you this. As simple a thing as the Electoral Commission, Mr. President, in a country such as Jamaica, where there are 8 members on the Electoral Commission of Jamaica, there are 4 members, 2 appointed by the Prime Minister, 2 by the Leader of the Opposition, so that takes care of the politics. And then there are 4 independent persons who are selected. And one of those 4 independent persons is the chairperson. So you don't have brinkmanship at the very head of that body, and you have a balance, a counterbalance against the political appointees put in. I'm asking, why can't that be an immediate step that Guyana takes as part of the reforms to eliminate what happened a few months ago?
Well, let us look at it. Let us look at it. And you have to understand that we are a very small society too, and a very connected society. So just as you explained the system in Jamaica, we have 3 commissioners that are appointed by the opposition, the parliamentary opposition, 3 commissioners appointed by the government, the president, and the chair of the commission, who holds the casting vote, is appointed through a consultation, right? So the president can't appoint. The opposition has to bring 7 names to the president, of which the president would select 1. So you have to have consensus on the candidate that you select for the chair, right? So the chair is the casting vote. That is the present system. What took place goes beyond the commission, and this is what I think. This is where you have to get a thorough view of what took place. This goes beyond the commission. When the machinery itself, the technical and professional body that makes up the secretariat, not the commission, that makes up the secretariat of GCOM, you had senior staff there who are supposed to work and act independently, that those persons found themselves highly compromised.
Yeah, that's a major problem.
That is the difference here.
Yes, yeah, I agree with you.
It's not the commission is one issue.
Yes.
But on the other hand, you have, and that is why I said in a recent interview, even in the public service, persons have to decide whether you want to be a public servant, a technocrat, or whether you want to be in politics.
Question for you, Mr. President.
Yes.
Hear you on that. Question for you. We're coming up to the close of this first segment. I want to get this question in before we break. The Commission of Inquiry that you no doubt want to see happen and that you will consult on laying the various pieces together before it comes into being. Based on how you want to see it, are you looking at heading it up with a foreigner, as Jamaica did with David Simmons when it looked into the West Kingston Commission of Inquiry? We know that eminent jurists in Jamaica, for one, have served Guyana as commissioners in commissions of inquiry. Or are you keeping it local? And when are we likely to see the COI people, staffed, and ready to roll, Mr. President?
Well, I have tremendous faith in our national human asset, but I have tremendous faith also in our regional assets, human assets. And you have seen on many occasions, we have, the region came in strong defense of our democracy, and the human assets from within the region has always been our first call. And even in this recent investigations that are taking place, we reached out to our regional sister and brother states. So definitely, I think the region will have to play a part. But we have also gotten requests from many of the international organizations, OAS and so on, the Commonwealth. These are all organizations that play a key role. So between the OAS, Commonwealth, and CARICOM, I think we will have a great opportunity to determine a good panel to look at this COI.
And when, Mr. President, but just before the break, when are we likely to see this COI taking shape and ready to roll? What date are you looking at?
I am not allowing this to also derail or affect the functioning of government, because we have a country to run. So we are settling in as a government. We had to bring an emergency budget for the last 4 months. And that by itself tells a story of what took place over the last 5 years. So we are working on that emergency budget. We are settling in the government. We are moving on some important transformative projects to create employment, to open up the economy, to further strengthen growth and broaden the portfolio of growth and economic progress. So whilst we are working on that, we're simultaneously working on these things. As you're aware, there's a criminal investigation going on now.
Yes. I think we broke. I think we lost the connection just at the end there. Never mind, we're at the break anyway. So let's reconnect with Dr. Muhammad Irfaan Ali, the President of Guyana. This is The Conversation.
With CIBC Global Money Transfer, send money abroad securely from your home at $0 transfer fee. You can do it online or through the CIBC mobile app. Visit cibc.com/global transfer for details.
In the heart of Kingston's business mecca is a 17-story gem. The Jamaica Pegasus Hotel offers luxury to all our visitors for business or leisure. Relax in one of our many deluxe suites with mountain or pool views. Savor the array of culinary delights in our Blue Window restaurant. Enjoy complimentary breakfast or visit our 24/7 cafe. We boast 9 extensive conference facilities for your meetings and banquets. We look forward to welcoming you soon at the Jamaica Pegasus Hotel.
Welcome back to the conversation. My guest is the President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, Dr. Mohamed Irfaan Ali. It took some time for him to get there. The protracted result of the election, dispute on top of dispute, and OAS mission led by the former Jamaica Prime Minister Bruce Golding. Bruce Golding said that he has never in his entire career seen a more overt attempt to influence the result of an election, i.e. steal an election, than he saw in Guyana. And we all know those issues. Dr. Ali and his team have the very important task of cleaning up that mess along with the other important things that the people of Guyana want addressed. Dr. Ali, let's talk the black gold, because I recently read an article which said that the pandemic has really put a damper on Guyana's plans to exploit its natural resources, no doubt for the benefit of the people. Can you speak to me about, well, whether this is true, if it is, that what has happened with the pandemic, falling oil prices, how has that affected what you would plan to do with those resources to make the people's lives better?
Well, first of all, let me say that the COVID pandemic has had tremendous effect on Guyana and all developing countries and states. It has a profound effect on the world at large. Only yesterday, in my address to the UN, I point to the fact that this pandemic has derailed our progress on many of the social fronts: health, education, housing, and what you're seeing now is the reprogramming of resources, national resources, international resources, away from many of these poverty issues and so on into COVID-19 response agenda. That, of course, must have a tremendous effect on the plans and programs of almost all states, especially developing countries. But let me say this, that our objective and our economic plan does not hinge on oil and gas alone. Oil and gas is a critical component of our economy now, but it gives us that impetus to expand other segments of our economy. The construction sector, agricultural sector, tourism, industry, manufacturing. These are all sectors that we will pay heavy attention on, inclusive of our traditional sectors of mining, oil and rice, sugar. So whilst we are focused on ensuring that oil and gas gives us the revenue that will allow us to quickly broaden the base of our economy and to make those other industries competitive, most of the jobs that we plan to create, and we plan to create 50,000 new jobs over the next 5 years, most of those jobs are in the non-oil sector. And we have been focusing heavily on building the non-oil sector, and that is where you will see a number of policies geared towards making the non-oil sector more competitive, giving them comparative advantages, and so on. The forestry sector, climate change, ensuring that we build a knowledge economy that is driven by a strong technological backbone. These are things that form part of the broadened economic plan that we have. So it is not solely determined or hinged on oil and gas.
We come back to that. Let me ask you this, though. Since you've gone there talking about identifying sectors, before you, I took the trouble of reading Guyana's 2018 labor force survey, and what it told me was that agriculture employs 18.9% of all Guyanese in work. That was at 2018, not so long ago, 24 months, as it was in the 2012 census. So the 2012 census said agriculture run about 18.9%, 19%, and the same thing was said in the 2017 survey as reflected in the 2017 census as reflected in the labor force survey of 2018. So agriculture, 19%. Wholesale and retail trade, 17%. Then public administration and defense, 9.3%, and manufacturing, which was a surprise to me at 8.4%. I expected manufacturing to be greater than that. Under your administration and the plans you have, Dr. Ali, will the pie chart of employment by sector in Guyana continue to look like this, or will new winners emerge?
So this is what you will see. You will see that the traditional sectors will be sustained and become more competitive so that they can hold their own and keep those jobs going. You will see greater emphasis on the construction sector. For example, we are looking at having 50,000 new house lots, out of which 25,000 new home construction. So the construction sector is going to take up a greater segment of the employment. Then you have the services industry. We have just launched expression of interest for 4 new hotels, well, not 4, for new hotels. But we are looking in the next 5 years to have 4 new branded hotels in Guyana. And then you have the infrastructure transformation that will take place, including the new Demerara River Bridge, the Quarantine River Bridge linking us by bridge to Suriname, the opening up of new agricultural land, the building of business incubating services, the support for sugar, the expansion of livestock farming, the building of a knowledge economy, the promotion of health and education as export service honor. Those are some of the new things that you will see. So the services sector would see an upflow also in terms of employment. But importantly for manufacturing, and you raised this as an issue, the reason we are not attractive for manufacturing at the moment is because of the cost of energy.
Yes.
Now, with natural gas coming to shore and our energy mix, which includes hydro, by the time we get up to year 4, our plan is that the electricity cost or the energy cost would reduce by 50 to 60%, which is going to make us a major destination for investment in manufacturing and industrial development. And we have already started to pursue these opportunities out there. So you will see also an upswing in manufacturing and industrial development.
Yes.
So the services sector will see an upswing. You'll see an upswing in manufacturing. You'll see an upswing in construction. And this is linked to the regional economy now, because a lot of what will take place would require movement of labor. It would require additional capacity and contractual players operating in Guyana.
Yeah.
But those opportunities are going to extend and expand
Tell me this, Mr. President. In 2017, about 550,000 thereabouts of your population, your country's population, was 15 years and older. So if you're going to create 50,000 jobs over the next 5 years, that's the captive group that will be getting those jobs. So my question is this. Clearly, this is the 21st century and Guyana is forward moving. You're not creating jobs where men or women go into the field with sticks and break ground, because clearly that requires no skills, no training. What is the program, the ambitious program that has to match the ambitious target of 50,000 jobs to train up those who are eligible for work so that they can benefit from these jobs that you're creating? Go ahead, Mr. President.
Well, that is what I just outlined. But
no, but I didn't hear the training aspect. I didn't hear the training aspect of it. I didn't hear the training and skills development aspect of it, which is why I'm coming back.
I'm going to come to the training aspect directly, because we are going to offer 20,000 scholarships that will be directly linked to the economic output. So we'll have to conduct a manpower survey to look at the educational output as against what is required by the economic input.
Yes.
So we can match skills in a new demand area. But let me correct you though. Food production and food security does not necessarily require, find itself in the traditional view that people may have, going to the fields in sticks and so on. No. The new competitive agricultural sector requires a lot of training. So you have the sophisticated farmers now, right? We have to build their capacity. We have to give them training. We have to give them new technology, new crops, to have higher yield, so better management skills. So that training is linked to food production. And food production is cannot be viewed in a traditional form of people going to the fields with sticks. That concept is totally outdated. Yes, you must have agricultural workers who will be in the field, but the concept has changed tremendously in terms of what constitutes management of the agricultural sector.
Mr. President, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Sure you're aware of this.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Let me say this also.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
A lot of focus will be on...
I hope we didn't lose the connection. Yeah, right. You can go ahead. I'm saying to you, Mr. President, that's exactly what I'm saying. That the forward-moving Guyana will not have large armies of this kind of traditional worker. Because here's the thing. If just use a straight line example. If your agricultural sector is employing perhaps 2.5 times more than your manufacturing sector is employing. What it says is that perhaps there is great capacity that is being underutilized or not utilized at all in the area of, say, agro-processing.
It's a very simple analysis, basically.
No, Mr. President, don't do that.
We have raw production.
Yes.
We have raw production at the moment, with very limited processing or manufacturing.
There you go.
And that is because it cannot be competitive because of the cost of energy.
Yes.
When we bring down the cost of energy and create the incentive mechanism, then we'll go more into agro-processing, we'll go more into packaging, we'll go more into manufacturing, and that of course take you up the value chain and take up the price of the commodity. Take one example. Packaged sugar is $700 per ton. Raw sugar is $300 per ton. Refined sugar is $450 per ton. All our sugar at the moment is raw sugar.
Point made.
Huh?
Point made. Stick a pin right there, Mr. President. We're going to take a break and come right back. I'm speaking with the President of Guyana. He's talking about the challenges ahead of him, how he intends to tackle those challenges, and these sectors that are expected to churn out the jobs to employ Guyanese to drive productivity in the country. And of course, productivity goes up. GDP goes along with it. And he's thinking of better days for his country. Much more with the President after this break.
Of Kingston's business mecca is a 17-story gem. The Jamaica Pegasus Hotel offers luxury to all our visitors for business or leisure. Relax in one of our many deluxe suites with mountain or pool views. Savor the array of culinary delights in our Blue Window restaurant. Enjoy complimentary breakfast or visit our 24/7 cafe. We boast 9 extensive conference facilities for your meetings and banquets. We look forward to welcoming you soon at the Jamaica Pegasus Hotel.
Guyana's President Dr. Mohamed Irfaan Ali, fresh from an address at the United Nations, virtually of course, given the COVID-19 pandemic, and he has kindly consented to speaking with us, speaking to you in the diaspora about his plans for Guyana. There is a new government in charge in the Cooperative Republic, and they say that they are determined to increase the outcomes, increase opportunities for all Guyanese, and that they are going to be an inclusive government in name and how they go about things. Dr. Ali, let me put this one to you. Recently, the eminent scholar, Dr. Ronald Sanders, who has a weekly column in the Jamaican papers and has done so since I was in high school, and it's been a long time since I was there. He wrote something, and I said, well, this is a brilliant premise for a question, because you know, of course, along with providing jobs, it's to be able to provide those jobs with the attendant or the concomitant salary, the wages that would make those who are working not part of this group of the working poor, but they're able to earn, to contribute to productive endeavors and to feed themselves and their families. It makes no sense you have a job that's not paying you, that's keeping you poor. This is what Ronald Sanders wrote, and I want to relay it to you. He said, money could go a very long way to alleviating the circumstances of the Guyanese people, who since the 1980s have been the second poorest in the Caribbean, Haitians being the poorest. He noted that per capita income in Guyana in 2018 was $4,760, less than half the average for Latin America and the Caribbean. With that as a fact, I checked that against the World Bank document that he took those numbers from. How does this Ali administration make a reality jobs for Guyanese that bring with it an income that can sustain them and that can lift those people, your people, out of poverty?
Well, thank you very much for that question. First of all, we just discussed what the frame of the economy will be. Of course, in that frame, you'll have higher levels of jobs, higher levels of training. You'll have more sophisticated economic activity going on, and you will have greater revenue flow. So with that comes greater and better salaries. With greater revenue, you will have greater and better salaries. But you also have to look at inflation. And you have to manage in the context of that also. And sometimes we look narrowly at salaries and we don't look at the overall analysis of a country. And to do this, we have to understand where Guyana was in 1992, where we are today. And I don't have to go over the figures, you know this.
Yes.
But importantly is what are the other social incentives that the country offers its population. I'm not saying this to say the increase in salary will not come or it's not necessary. Of course, it is more than necessary and it will come with the growth in the economy. But also we have to look at social safety nets, what we have in store for our pensioners. We have just restored free water for our pensioners. We have just removed VAT from electricity and water for our population. We have just given a cash grant to school children, a uniform grant to school children, and this is all the school children of our country. We are now in the process of giving a household cash grant for COVID-19 pandemic, to cope with the COVID-19 pandemic. We have just increased our old age pension for pensioners, and this is every person who achieved the age of 65, whether they worked or not, they're entitled to this pension. All right? We have a free healthcare system, free university, free education. We're now moving towards making the education at the University of Guyana also free of charge. We're working towards investing in human capital with 20,000 new scholarships. And then we forget the geographic layout of Guyana. When we look at the poverty gap and the poverty analysis, we have to understand geographic structure of Guyana. You have communities that are you have to fly in some communities for 2 hours to get to those communities. Some of those communities have a population of 200 persons, but we still have to take the infrastructure. We still have to take water. We still have to take education. We still have to take healthcare. And I would like for you at some time to look at the statistics, and you will see how we have bridged the gap in many of those communities under successive PPCB government.
Yes.
There was a time when there was no access to water, primary education, secondary education. We brought primary education to a situation situation where we had universal access.
Yes.
We were about to achieve that in secondary education.
Yes.
So my friend, I want to say to you that Sir Saunders is right. The premise is right that these things will change, and it gives us an opportunity for higher levels of income. But sometimes we miss the holistic nature of growth and development.
Yes, the broad picture is always important, but I come back with this again. And if you feel you've addressed it already, I'm asking for an expansion by reintroducing this question. When you sat with your closest confidants and were planning a tilt at the presidency, of course, the PPPC taking office and you as a presidential candidate, the world was markedly different from what it is now. Guyana's prospects projected to grow by 52.8% this year, higher than all 26 Latin American and Caribbean countries overall. You were projected to be the star. That outlook has changed somewhat. And the revenue that you would have been, well, not banking on, but projecting would have been available for you to do your very ambitious social care program and provide the increase in salaries and expansion in benefits that would be necessary at this time. That has changed. With that picture changed, Mr. President, are you still in a position to be as ambitious in what you want to give to the people in terms of grants, benefits, and of course, higher salaries?
Well, let me put it this way to you. If you take out the non-oil economy and the oil and gas economy, you will see that over the last 5 years, the non-oil economy suffered to the extent that you had regression. And when we sat down and planned the manifesto, a lot of focus was on the non-oil economy. How do we get back the non-oil economy going? How do we ensure that there are incentives to promote the private sector reinvestment and recapitalizing in the non-oil economy? We did this so effectively in an emergency budget that the entire opposition debate in Parliament is criticizing the government of having too much of a private sector budget, a private sector-driven budget. Can you believe that?
Yes, I heard that.
Even with the adjustment that we have that is taking place because of what is happening with oil and gas, we have been able to deliver all that I told you we just delivered. Even with that adjustment in an emergency budget. So I'm saying to you that we are committed to all the targets we set in the manifesto. And I hope some point we will come back to discussion on that itself. But let me say to you also that part of moving forward, part of ensuring that the economy has a wide enough base to withstand any shock is ensuring we put the mechanism in place to protect those sectors and make them competitive. That is why Guyana is such a wonderful destination for investment, because of the economic spread and the opportunities that are there. And I'm hoping to see major investment from the Jamaican private sector in Guyana in the area of tourism, hotel services.
Yes.
The new infrastructure that will take place, agriculture, because we're going to support mega farms. Look at CARICOM food bill. You're looking at a natural market there.
Yes.
And if we are to become competitive to the extent that we get 10% of the CARICOM food market, you know what you're talking about? So the opportunities are varied here in Guyana, and it is very important that persons understand the opportunities. Whilst we have setback on oil and gas, one can easily argue that we have the price of gold has been nothing but good in the last year.
Hear you on that. Just before we break for the final time, Mr. President, just before we break for the final time, you say that your government has placed so much focus on non-oil that your opponents in Parliament say, well, this is a private sector budget that you're pitching. So that gives me the opportunity to ask this question. Of those 50,000 jobs that you committed to in your manifesto and that you repeated at your inauguration that your government will create over the next 5 years, How many of those are non-oil jobs? How many of those are oil jobs?
I'll give you one example. And I know I'm taking up a lot of the time. Let me give you just one example. If we build 5,000 houses in a year, and this is what we are going to do in the housing program, and we employ a minimum of 5 persons per home, which is a very conservative estimate. 5,000 by 5 is 25,000 jobs, my friend.
And that leads me again to another question. Are you talking about seasonal jobs, permanent jobs?
No, I'm talking about, I'm just giving you one example in the housing sector.
But that
the housing sector will go on for the next 5 years.
Yes.
Because we have to deliver 50,000 house lots. And we are looking to build an average of 5,000 houses per year over the next 5 years.
Hear you on that.
But remember, when housing expands itself, there's a lot of other job opportunities that are created.
Yes.
It is the greatest translatory benefit for any economy.
Yes.
Because when you build a home, it is not only the carpenters and the mason, it is the hardware store.
Yes.
It is the transportation services.
Yes.
It's the truck driver. It is the mechanic. So the linkage, we have to understand the linkage, the economic linkage that takes place with these policies.
And let's use a purely economic term. The multiplier effect of building houses, Mr. President, is proven. We're coming back for the final segment. We're coming back for the final segment. Stay where you are. Don't move. We're speaking with Guyana's President, Dr. Mohamed Irfaan Ali, talking about his country's future. It sounds exciting. It sounds exciting. Much more after the break.
With CIBC Global Money Transfer, send money abroad securely from your home at $0 transfer fee. You can do it online or through the CIBC mobile app. Visit cibc.com/global transfer for details.
In the heart of Kingston's business mecca is a 17-story gem. The Jamaica Pegasus Hotel offers luxury to all our visitors for business or leisure. Relax in one of our many deluxe suites with mountain or pool views. Savor the array of culinary delights in our Blue Window restaurant. Enjoy complimentary breakfast or visit our 24/7 cafe. We boast 9 extensive conference facilities for your meetings and banquets. We look forward to welcoming you soon at the Jamaica Pegasus Hotel.
Back with us on the conversation, our final segment with the President of Guyana, Dr. Mohamed Irfaan Ali. He's talking about his country's future and how his government plans to make a better reality for Guyanese now and over this governance cycle. Dr. Ali, you recently hosted a very high-profile visitor, the Secretary of State of the United States, Mike Pompeo. Your opposition had a lot to say. I kept reading in the news daily, Joseph Harman and his colleagues having much to say about what you should sign, what you shouldn't sign, what you should be able to negotiate, what you shouldn't enter into talks about. What were the highlights of those discussions you had with your U.S. counterpart, which I'm sure I'm sure you'd see the visit as affirmation of what Guyana's position, not just in this region, but in the world. But what are the highlights of what you managed to talk about, to discuss with the U.S. Secretary of State?
Well, you know, we discussed many issues, but we have some very important MOUs and agreements that we signed during the course of that visit. One has to do with the shipwrights agreement, and that is important for us here in Guyana, but not only Guyana, but for the region as a whole. You know, we don't have the type of capacity in terms of capital equipment, in terms of training, in terms of personnel, and we have a very large EEZ, exclusive economic zone. So that agreement allows us to partner with the U.S. to build capacity locally, to have access to capital equipment, and to be able to jointly protect our exclusive economic zone, to work together on issues of anti-terrorism issues, anti-narcotics operations. So from a security perspective, from a sovereignty perspective, from a modernization perspective of our security forces, from a training and technology transfer perspective, I think this brings tremendous benefit to Guyana and for Guyanese.
For those Guyanese... continue, Mr. President, continue.
Secondly, we spoke about radar coverage of our EEZ. Again, the borders of Guyana are expansive. They cover bordering with Venezuela, Brazil, Suriname, and then the Atlantic coast. So we have been able to discuss support for radar coverage of our EEZ. And this again helps us with security, it helps us with planning, it helps us in identifying potential threat. It can also help us on issues of monitoring changes in the environment, changes along the coast, changes in our forest areas, and so on. So that is another important issue that we have been able to address. We also addressed the issue of the Catfish Ban that we had. We have been able to raise that with the Secretary of State, and there is a high-level team that is looking at that. And very importantly, we signed an agreement that would see greater private sector participation between the U.S. private sector and our local private sector. I think Jamaica might have signed that agreement too.
Yes.
And what you will see here is a lot of technology transfer, more access to capital. And you know, the cost of capital is very important for countries like ours. And having access to that capital, having access to that technology, and more importantly, having an agreement that allows for a greater partnership between the U.S. private sector and Guyanese private sector. At this time, when there is such an intense interest from the developed world in opportunities here in Guyana, allows us to piggyback on local content to ensure that our local private sector is not left out, and they are part of any development framework that will ensure local content and local participation.
Yeah. For those Guyanese in the diaspora who will watch us, Mr. President, who may say, well, I read so many things in the paper, well, I've read so many things in the paper about Guyana and Venezuela and this dispute over territorial waters and, of course, what's in them. What should we read into Secretary Pompeo's visit to Guyana and, of course, the U.S. stance towards Venezuela at the UN and at other forums? How has this visit improved our capacity to stand up to defend what is ours? What would you say to them if they had that query?
Well, let me say this. The U.S. is an important strategic partner for us, an important partner for development. The U.S. played an important role, just as CARICOM, just as the Commonwealth, just as Canada, in our democracy. Jamaica itself also, some of your leaders played an important role. But importantly, we believe in democracy. We understand how important democracy is for any society. We believe in the freedom of people and ensuring that any transition happens in a democratic framework and a democratic way, and those are principles we stand up for. And of course, we stand solidly behind our sovereignty, all of us. And I think the U.S. has made it very clear where they stand in terms of our territorial integrity and our sovereignty, and that is important for us.
COVID-19, we have to finish up the program talking about this because it's here to stay. There is no such thing as post-COVID. Insofar as the ability of your government to assist people to abide by the new normal, to adapt for the new normal, businesses to adapt. What would you say is your capacity now? Is your capacity to do that strong, or is it in need of work?
Well, we came from a position where we had no capacity. We have spent the last 5 months building capacity. For example, we have moved from a situation where we had 40 to 80 tests per day to a situation some days where we have 300 tests. We have increased the beds, ICU beds, increased the medical aspect, the medical support aspect. But you know, you ask a very important question, and I like how you frame it, the new norm. I am very strong in my views on how we face this new norm. As CARICOM itself, we have to make some very tough decisions because we have to live in a COVID environment. We have to be able to manage in a COVID environment. But we can't do so being continuously locked away or locked down. So how do we ensure that collectively we build guidelines and protocols that will allow us to move towards reopening? And I think this is where the conversation becomes very important. If we continue in this lockdown mode and curfew mode, then after hopefully the vaccine comes, after that, the magnitude of the economic and social impact would create another nightmare for us. So how is it we can move towards strengthening our systems, putting the proper protocols and guidelines in place that allows us to move towards a discussion on opening, especially our borders? Flights, there are a lot of investors, for example, from Trinidad that call me on a daily basis, that's call the office in relation to movement. Same for Guyanese investors. So I think you have really raised an important question, but it is a question that requires broader consultation and broader response. But as president, I think that the time has come for us to discuss protocols that would allow us to live and manage in a COVID environment.
Mr. President, thank you for that answer. There are some people who have a worry. They worry that what may happen at the parliamentary level may percolate into the wider society and make it that much more difficult for the country to heal after the process of the election. And let me tell you what I mean by this. They may say, well, efforts by this administration to put the systems in place and to hold to account those who were responsible for the protracted declaration of those results, it may be seen by some as a witch hunt. It may be seen by some as a necessary holding to account of persons responsible for events that cast Guyana in a bad light. I say all that to say it's a delicate balance that you have to strike. How do you see, what route do you see towards successfully punishing those who ought to be punished, putting in the systems in place without making it look like a witch hunt to hurt those who were or who are your political rivals? Did we lose the president? We may have lost him there. Oh, we may have lost him there. All right, let's see if we can delay and try to get that connection back. Speaking with Dr. Mohammed Irfaan Ali, he is the president of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. You would recall that his party, the PPP, People's Progressive Party, Civic, they challenged they challenged because they were the opposition, the APNO-AFC coalition in those March 2 elections. And based on all reports that the PPPC, they did win the elections, but because of a lot of skullduggery and other things which went on, it took 50-odd days for a winner to be declared. When Dr. Ali eventually took office, it was after Guyana's name had been dragged through the mud, some people would say, and it was not good for the country. And steps have to be taken to ensure that the country is never embarrassed like that again. Dr. Ali, I hope you caught the question. I was asking about the delicate balancing act that you have to now perform to ensure that the necessary punishment for those who did wrong in their actions in the period between the declaration of the result and the close of polls on March 2, the implementation of the systems that will ensure that these things don't happen again, and what some people would call a witch hunt. How do you balance all of that to not make it appear as if it is any victimization against your political rivals?
I will see if I get the context of the question completely right, because it was coming in and out. But let me say this, that it depends on which side you stand on the issue. And I believe that most, if not all of the region, the international community, and Guyanese who stand on the side of democracy and stand on the side of what is right, see this as a necessary step in ensuring that accountability is there, those who are responsible, and ensuring that, you know, you set the right example so that no one would ever try this on Guyana again. As you rightfully said, our country, the credibility of our country was damaged. You know, so I think the population and the international community understand this issue, and once you stand on the right side, and we have a responsibility also to take the narrative to every community across the country. We have to allow and let the communities across the country and in our diaspora understand the narrative and why this is important and why is it necessary.
I think we may have lost the president again. It's a shame because we had such a very good well, he's back with us. President, the internet is acting up. I'm going to give you a chance in 30 seconds just to close out because we've been going well so far. I just wanted to speak to Guyanese at home and in the diaspora who acknowledge this new administration, who have high hopes and high aspirations for the future. What do you want to say to them about your commitment to success?
Well, I just want to say to Guyanese at home and in the diaspora that we are committed to building a Guyana in which we can create opportunities for every Guyanese and beyond.
All right. Wow. In the olden days, you'd call it the printer's devil, but it's the internet devil that's really affecting us now. Should we hold on to see if we can get the connection, or should we take a break? I think we should take a break.
With CIBC Global Money Transfer, send money abroad securely from your home at $0 transfer fee. You can do it online or through the CIBC mobile app. Visit cibc.com/global transfer for details.
All right, so we are closing out with Dr. Mohammed Irfaan Ali, the President of Guyana. Mr. President, before we were so rudely interrupted by the internet demons, I was asking you to talk to your people at home and abroad about the kind of Guyana that you are committed to building for them and their children.
Well, first of all, let me say to Guyanese at home and in the diaspora that the Guyana that we are building is one for all Guyanese. But beyond that, it is one also that must cater for the aspirations of our regional partners, our brothers and sisters in CARICOM, first and foremost, who stood by Guyana in the past and continue to stand by Guyana. Our prosperity must also be a prosperity for the region. But Guyanese can look forward for a country that will create many more opportunities for them, a country that would be progressive in our legislative agenda, a country that would have a better system of governance, a better system of justice, a better system of cooperation and collaboration, and of course a country that would be completely transformed in the next 4 to 5 years. The country infrastructure is going to be completely transformed. The skyline of the country is going to be completely transformed. I say to those Guyanese and investors in the region that this is your opportunity to be part of this transformation. This is your opportunity to look, to understand, and to appreciate the variations in relation to the type of transformation that will take place. Not only fixation on the oil and gas sector, but many other sectors that will expand in every single region of our country, because the investment must be spread across the geography of our country so that we don't have issues of expanded inequality issues, but that we bridge the gap of inequality and that we create an environment in which vulnerable communities and vulnerable sections of our society are safeguarded and protected. So you can rest assured of a Guyana that is democratic, one that is free, and one that will abide by the Constitution and the rule of law. Thank you very much for having me on your program. I wish all of us continue to stay safe. To those who are still battling in ICU or in hospitals with the COVID-19 in the COVID-19 pandemic, I wish you a speedy recovery, and I say may God bless you and your families. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. President. All the best, Dr. Ali. Dr. Mohammed Irfaan Ali, the President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, speaking about his country's future under the leadership of himself as President and the People's Progressive Party, Cibc, the party that won the March 2 elections, the disputed elections, but there is a new government in place. That's it for the conversation this week. We'll be back next week.